Before that, on BBC Radio 4, we look into the rise of children being born to people in gay and lesbian relationships. Mary Smeeth, mother of 2 boys, investigates the issues, challenges and advancements in the law for same-sex parents.
I'm Jo, I'm 13 and I'm Mary and Ashley's son.
I'm Harry, I'm 16 and I'm Mary and Ashley's son.
Mary and Ashley both get called Mum.
I sometimes just use first names, but they're just my parents, they're just there. When you're talking to someone and they'll kind of say something about their dad or what does your dad do, it's quite a big thing to explain. And so sometimes it's almost not worth the effort.
I'm Mary Smeeth and I'm the mother of Harry and Jo. Their other mum is my former partner, Ashley.
I remember Mary and I discussing at length about having children. Something that's always kind of stuck with me is how considered having children is in a same-sex relationship. It doesn't happen by accident. I remember worrying about what the nurses might think or what the doctors might think. Mary had a difficult labour and we were rushed into theatre towards the end because Harry's heartbeat was going into distress. And then he cried and then it was all fantastic. I remember just bursting into tears. I mean, it was an incredibly emotional experience. I imagine that whole experience is no different to any heterosexual relationship at all.
I don't remember a specific moment, particularly when it kind of came up for the first time. I think if you look at kids and they're kind of 6, 7, 8, I don't think they really care. They've not got any of that kind of inbuilt prejudice, especially when you're just kind of mucking around in the playground and stuff. It's not necessarily a thing that would come up.
I guess secondary school, then people were a bit like, not shocked, but actually surprised by it or didn't expect it. There wasn't like a negative reaction, it was just like, I hadn't experienced it before, I guess, so.
People especially want to know physically, obviously, how people have children. I think if you just kind of act like it's normal, then if other people don't want to, that's their fault, to be honest.
When we had children in 1997, we didn't feel like pioneers. But as it turned out, there weren't many other same-sex couples doing the same thing. In the last few years, though, since changes in the civil partnership laws and legislation to introduce gay marriage, the number of children born in same-sex families has started to rise significantly. So I'm setting out to hear the issues that people are coming up against and the great strides being made.
When I came out, we were in a small community. Actually, it was a very welcoming community, but for my wife and I, we were the only gay family.
Actor Sophie Ward has 2 grown-up children and is a patron of Out With the Family.
And before we get started, we're going to give you some pens and papers.
They organise events for gay parents and their children to get together, talk, share and network.
1, 2, 3.
Gay parents with children and transgender parents with children may feel, or they may be, the only gay parents at their school, and so there are issues that they might want to talk about with other parents, and also the children all get together. I mean, I don't think they're having a particularly political conversation, but they do get to hang out and play, and the parents can chat and, feel a bit less isolated, I think. We're at the Ivy Club today, but we do other things. We're going to Legoland and we go to the zoo.
My children are older as well, and I now feel that I've massively deprived them because I don't think they ever got a sniff of the ivy. So I just wonder if you reflect and think, gosh, I wish there had been something like this for me.
Yes, absolutely. It would have been amazing.
Charlie Condu is best known for playing midwife Marcus Dent in Coronation Street. He's a patron of Out With the Family and diversity role models. Charlie co-parents 2 children with his partner and a friend, Catherine.
There have always been gay parents, but I think it's people tend to be more open about it these days. But also I think there are more people in the public eye that are doing it. I mean, obviously, people like Elton John and Ricky Martin, and showing other gay people that it is a possibility. If you want to have children, your sexuality shouldn't really have anything to do with that.
They tend to be fabulously wealthy and able to afford all kinds of things that normal, in quotes, people can't.
Sure.
I suppose one concern I have, I wonder if you feel like this, is that there is a danger of it being perceived as a lifestyle choice instead of what it is, which is a really thought out and very, very difficult decision.
Absolutely. I know Elton and David a little bit, and I'm sure they're wonderful parents. But yes, I don't imagine they struggle on the escalators at the tube station with their double buggy like I do, and like so many other parents do as well. The fact is that parenting is parenting, regardless of your sexuality. In fact, when you're a parent, you keep your sexuality away from your kids.
It's very heartwarming for me to hear you say that. And the difference between me and other gay people who don't have kids is much bigger than the difference between me and straight people with children.
Sure.
And I don't think there is such a thing as gay parenting in the sense that you are sort of taking a gay approach to putting your breakfast cereal out.
Absolutely, and that's the point. It's just an argument to me that doesn't make any sense, particularly when all the children I know from same-sex families are doing really well. But I don't imagine that's got anything to do with their parents' sexuality. I think that's probably to do with all sorts of other things, just like any family.
I mean, exactly. Obviously, I have two highly gifted and successful children.
Of course you do.
Just not because I'm a lesbian. No.
All parents worry about bullying, but then, when I was at school, it was if you were ginger, you really got it, you know.
Well, my youngest child is ginger, or strawberry blonde, as we call it in North London. But he's managing to survive under that double disadvantage, I have to say.
I remember Father's Day being a bit weird. It was almost like there was none to celebrate.
My son, Joe.
When it gets to Mother's Day, I guess you realise that you've got a lot to do. My two mums, who I was living with until I was 6, broke up, and then Ashley got a new girlfriend since I was about 6, and then Mary also met Michelle 2.5 years ago.
I mean, obviously Mother's Day with 4 women is an absolute nightmare, I can tell you.
My name's Michelle and I'm Mary's partner. Because I'm from the Bible Belt part of America, so it's very Christian, right-wing. It's one of the red sort of states. So being gay in itself is quite difficult, and most people I know aren't out. So to have children in that environment, I think would be very, very difficult. I never thought I'd be a mother, never wanted to be a mother, and lived my life without thinking about children at all. And then I met Mary. A lot of people told me not to go out with her because she had children, because I had been living a lifestyle that was very free. I could go and do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. Then she invited me to watch one of her sons play rugby one morning. And I remember seeing for the first time when he went over to her after the match, and I thought, oh my God, she is somebody's mother. And I felt that I had a responsibility from the outset.
I'm Shani and I am Harry and Joe's stepmom. My sister's got 5 boys and I had such great relationships with all of them, so it was like inheriting another couple of nephews but that I live with, so it's a nice...
Christmas with 7 boys from 3 till 16 and every age in between is quite interesting.
Yeah. We got 5 aside with spares, so
yes.
That's always good.
It's such a weird argument to say people have to have kind of these like male role models in their life.
My son, Harry.
It's all based on these kind of old-fashioned values about all these gender roles. You know, you need a man to show you how to play football, do DIY. You know, anyone's capable of showing you that, and I think it's, as long as you have the kind of love and care there, it doesn't really matter about gender at all.
My mums have always been able to show me anything. I've never really thought, I wonder if a man could show me that better, because I doubt that they could.
Back at the Out With the Family event, I met Hannah, who is the founder of We Are Family magazine. It's the first national magazine for gay families. She has 2 children, Noah and Eli, with her civil partner, Rowena.
Right.
Yeah, orange. Yeah. We looked into adoption to start with, and that didn't seem to work out. We had a social worker who was quite negative about us being a lesbian couple. She sort of talked about second-rate families for second-rate kids. I mean, this was sort of 10 years ago or so. So
I think we're all aware that not everybody has the most positive attitude, but I still find it really shocking to hear you say that a social worker actually said to you, second rate.
we didn't live in an area where there were a lot of gay people, so they were not used to that, I guess. We moved through various different ways to do it. We asked various friends if they'd donate sperm. We then met a gay couple and decided we would try co-parenting with them. That basically emerged that it just wasn't going to work between us, so we eventually found a donor through a matching website and we did home insemination, and we now have 2 kids. It was long, but we got there in the end.
You know, for them they have 2 mummies and a dad, so it's great, really.
Generally with LGBT magazines, there's saying it's just for the community, as it's called, whatever that means, but it's really interesting to say that actually it's got a wider audience, and I imagine sometimes being able to give this magazine is quite a powerful thing for gay parents to be able to do, because it explains things in a way that they don't have to.
Yeah, and it makes it more normal for the rest of their family unit. For example, like my grandfather wasn't entirely accepting of us as a couple. He accepted Rowena, but he didn't want to come to our civil partnership because he didn't like us having a sort of public ceremony. And we had kids, and he sort of slowly started to accept that. But the thing that really helped was the magazine. You know, he subscribes to the magazine now. He sends me cuttings from the newspaper about, you know, stories around same-sex parenting. He's one of my best researchers.
You know, he reads the Telegraph, but we're even in the Telegraph now, and, you know, so...
Susan Golumbok is the director of the Centre for Family Research at the University of Cambridge. She has carried out studies on the effects on children of having gay parents since 1976. Her results are reassuring.
Generally, we find that the children are just like any other children. So the main areas that we focused on in the research are primarily children's psychological adjustment, so whether or not they have raised levels of emotional or behavioural problems, and also their gender development, so whether, for example, boys are less masculine than boys in heterosexual families, girls less feminine, which are views that have been expressed in courts of law by policymakers and so on.
And did you find any evidence that girls were less feminine or boys less masculine?
Absolutely not.
Linda Riley runs the Alternative Parenting Show, which has seminars and exhibition stands exploring all the possible legal ways to conceive. The event is in its 5th year, and last year 3,000 people attended.
I had twins with my partner, and so many people at that time, that was almost 8 years ago, were asking me how we did it. We got so fed up of telling the story to everybody, we decided to do a show about it. In my case, we'd have to have counselling before we can have children. Afterwards, when we had the children, I had to adopt the children because I was a non-biological mother, so I got the social workers coming around to approve me as a parent. For a long time, I didn't want to adopt them because I was like, why should I adopt my own children? But we realised that anything happened to my partner, I would have no rights over our own children, so it's pretty bad at the time. Fortunately, it's all changing for the better now.
That is very interesting, because my situation, and my children are slightly older, was we didn't go down the adoption route. My partner then had parental responsibility. The reason we didn't is I was told then that I would have to give up my own children for adoption. So I would lose the status of being their mother and become their adopted mother, and I just couldn't do that because I felt it was so wrong. So it's interesting to learn. Within our lifetime, big movements have happened.
Yeah, when the 2 parents, same-sex parents, could go on the birth certificates, that was an amazing moment.
A lot of attention in the press has been on civil partnerships and gay marriage, but the law has also been changing fast when it comes to the children of same-sex couples. Natalie Gamble from Natalie Gamble Associates is a lawyer specialising in gay family law.
The law has progressed in stages, so when you were having your kids it wouldn't have been possible for your partner to be a parent at all. And then in 2005 the law changed to allow non-birth mothers to adopt the child. And then there was another step forward in 2009 where lesbian parents who were conceiving together both became legal parents from the minute of conception and could be named on the birth certificate together. The law is still emerging, so there are lots of new issues which are kind of coming up all the time. And, you know, for example, couples who have conceived together are now starting to break up, and the courts are having to deal with those kinds of issues. And there are also issues around conception and who has rights if there are known donors involved or surrogates. So it's interesting law that's still emerging.
And the law has had to catch up with changes in society. The number of children brought up by same-sex couples has doubled in the last 10 years, according to the Office for National Statistics. Emma had never considered having a family until now. She took the decision to have donor sperm.
I'm very early stages of pregnancy. That's 4 weeks now. So
oh, wow.
Really early.
That's amazing. How did you come to make the decision you did?
We had some family trauma. I unfortunately lost my little sister a few years ago. So instead of career, I then thought, about time I focused on family, and not the family I've got, but the future family.
When I had donor sperm, we got a tiny sheet of paper with about 4 or 5 characteristics of the donor. That was it. It said things like regular features. so the most tiny bit of paper. Oh, we knew he had a degree. He was a quantity surveyor.
Very, very different now. It's all online. The one I used was the London Sperm Bank. So you just go on, view donors, and there you are. So you've got race, eye colour, hair colour, height, skin tone, nationality, education, occupation. Click on education.
Oh my goodness.
And you've got high school, diploma,
PhD,
university degree, master's degree. So you click on your donor.
Oh, and it's actually got a thing
so
that
here
says
we go.
view cart.
Yeah, it's like internet shopping.
You're going shopping, add to cart.
So
Ooh.
Select your product. That sounds really clinical. You select your product and they will only send the donor sperm to a clinic. So you have to be registered at one of their clinics before you can go on and buy it.
The experience I had was so different. The idea that you go onto a website and you literally add to cart the kind of donor you want is quite odd, and in some cases worrying, and I think will give critics an easy target of saying this is commodification of children. But I do think it is lovely that people can just be much more open and straightforward about what they're doing and not make it, because when we went to the clinic, their main concern was that we were undercover journalists out to expose them for helping lesbians have children. And that was in 1997, that's not very long ago.
When I conceived, it was an anonymous donor through a clinic, but it was always made clear to us that that donor would remain anonymous.
Yeah.
And I understand the law's changed now.
Yeah, the law changed on that in 2005. With donors in the UK, they have to agree to being identifiable. So what that means is that the child will have the right to find out the donor's identity once the child reaches the age of 18.
What about siblings?
Yeah, essentially any child who's conceived at a clinic in the UK after 1991 can find out if they have siblings in other families, and that's donor-conceived siblings. And then once they reach the age of 18, they can apply to make contact with them, but it needs consent on both sides.
Oh, I see.
Sometimes there may be quite a few siblings, because donors can be used with up to 10 different families, with possibly more than one child in each family.
Professor Susan Golombok.
Certainly the idea that children would be distressed by this didn't seem to be the case, as long as their parents spoke to them about their donor conception from an early age. It's just really more an issue of curiosity. But they were actually much more interested in their donor siblings than they were in the donors.
The interest in the sibling is understandable, because the sibling will have gone through exactly the same thing that you have.
Yes, absolutely. But also often they resemble each other a bit in appearance and so on. So I think that's quite nice as well for them. The problems that these children have don't come from within the family. They come from the outside world.
Harry, my son.
So I was in this sociology class, there was about 4 people, and I was just about doing some work, and the teacher was explaining something to someone, and they were doing about different family types. So he was trying to explain about gay families, and there's basically a couple of Christian kids, and they just really were not happy with the fact that gay people could have kids. Because I actually tried to say something, but they were saying that it's kind of like unnatural and God would like hate you, and it's such like an ignorant attitude.
Sometimes I felt my children were paying the price for my decision, and sometimes it felt like a very selfish thing to have done. Did you ever feel that?
Before I got married to my wife, I was very worried about those issues.
Actor Sophie Ward.
But actually my children and other children have taught me that my concerns were overblown. And in fact, my son feels very strongly that it's really important that gay parents shouldn't feel intimidated.
As you say, you learn from your children and you listen to your children, and that's something that I'm very struck by. A different generation take it much more in their stride, whereas we can still gulp a bit and think, gosh, we feel like we're having to confess something.
Yes, absolutely. And obviously you've been very brave, and it's a two-way street, isn't it? You know, your children have taken on your parenting skills and the love and confidence that you've given them, and they're giving it back to you.
Yeah, that's very powerful, I think. That's a thought to really take away. Thank you. So we've talked to lots of people who live in the city, and we thought it was important to actually talk to people who live somewhere else. And so now we are in a small country village, and we're going to see two people who have just adopted a little boy.
Hi, hello.
I'm Mary. Hello, nice to meet you.
Well, my name's Ben, and I'm married to Corey. And I was a nurse before I came off the register to bring up our son.
And I'm Corey, and I work as a gardener.
And how old was David when you first found him, if you like?
He had his 5th birthday a month or so before he actually came to us.
What was it that made you suddenly think it might be possible for you?
Well, the big thing was the law change that we could adopt as a couple. I think it was at 2007.
I suppose the annoying thing about being gay is that everyone, including us, I suppose, to a certain extent, expect that when you are gay, that something in your head switches on the gay bit and switches off the family bit. And that's completely not true.
I've got a very large family, 9 siblings altogether. And when I came out, I think the biggest grieving moment for me was the acceptance of the fact that I wasn't going to be a dad. And that's how I saw it at that point when I was about 18. That was a heartbreaking moment for me, and it was a relief when Ben, out of the blue, said, "Have you ever thought about adopting?"
When you were getting to know David and you met him, I'm assuming that he had not met a lot of same-sex couples before, so you were quite a new thing in his life, and I just wonder how that was handled by you and the social workers.
It was handled extremely well, actually.
There's a huge amount of preparation that goes on before you meet the child.
We had a blanket that we'd slept with for a couple of weeks, so he was familiar with our scent. And from the moment he got that, they said that he just wanted to sleep with just that blanket at night and not the duvet, so he knew we were coming. I was so nervous. I had butterflies all morning and walked up to the door, opened the door.
They said, Daddy and Papa are here for you, didn't they?
And he came running up and he had a big smile. He just looked up at us. And we looked down at him, and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is him. This is our wee boy.
We both thought how big he was, didn't we? Once we'd finally met him face to face, I knew that we'd made the right decision.
Yeah.
And you've had, 10 months together now?
Yes.
So what's that been like since that first moment?
Considering that when we first met him, he was like a toddler locked up in a 5-year-old's body.
He was literally locked in. Small vocabulary.
He wouldn't even look us in the eye. He had a real problem with eye contact.
He could not make any eye contact at all. And even had a faint American accent because of a lot of the electronic games which he had as his support and his communication. So we had this 3-word sentences in an American accent, and now we can't get him to be quiet. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? How was your day today?
Yeah. We learnt about jigsaws and number sums.
Number sums? Wow, that sounds good.
Listening to you, there's so much love in your voices and in that story, and yet there are people who think what you've done is very wrong. How do you feel about that?
Well, my mum included, and my cousin. But now that he's with us, I completely think that we are amazing parents, and we have the ups and downs that everyone else does. The same doubts, are we doing the right thing? But we've got a tremendous gift. I never really felt part of the human race before he moved in. I felt as if something was missing in my life, that now I almost feel as if I can hold my head up high.
Yeah,
But,
so
you know, we're
dads. Yeah,
we're dads.
We've had no negativity. We've had no funny side looks. We've had nothing. It's all just been wonderful.
You know, I'm sure there are people thinking that when we adopted David, that they must be wondering what on earth we do with him in the evening when we're out clubbing.
We haven't been clubbing for 15 years, you know.
I don't know if they still do YMCA in the clubs anymore.
One of the things that stays with me the most is how difficult it sometimes is for the dads.
Lawyer Natalie Gamble.
You know, I think the law and the structures are now in place for lesbian parents conceiving together, but gay dads often find it a lot more difficult, simply because it's biologically more difficult and they're more reliant on other people's help to conceive a child. Seeing that frustration is something that stays with me, and I would like to see things made easier for the dads as well as for the mums.
This is an album that we made up of almost the first year of photos.
You said you love spending time with Grandma and Grandad.
They're my parents, who he gets on incredibly well with, and they love him to pieces. Mum's changed her mind about two blokes parenting fairly quickly, actually, and she loves him.
The fact that there are gay dads now, I think, is fantastic. And what I really hope is that in another 20 years, this kind of programme won't be necessary, because it will be so usual. The idea that we don't create a safe, caring home for children as gay parents is clearly nonsense, and I think it's more the point that we might not create a safe, caring society for children of gay parents because of the prejudice. Although that sense of disapproval seems to be fading and isn't so much preoccupation, which I think it might have been for my generation a bit more.
It's that moment when you're walking alongside your child and all of a sudden you feel a little warm hand go into yours, and you suddenly have this feeling inside you. That's amazing.
Sitting even at the table, just seeing this wee boy there smiling away. Every now and again I still get a little bit emotional when I look at him. I just think, you were so close to not being adopted. We only heard about you sort of at the last second, sorry. And how lucky we are to have him.